Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I have my July wrap-up. The first book that I read in July was Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. This book came into the charity shop and I remembered how much I had enjoyed it as a child, and so I took it home and I read it that evening. It's possible to read this book in about half an hour. This book follows Fantastic Mr. Fox as he conspires against three farmers who are conspiring to kill him and his family, whilst he seeks to get food from them and their stores. Now, being the son of a farmer, I felt like I should empathise with the farmers and their plight of trying to kill a fox, because foxes are an issue for many farmers out there. However, I've always felt an affinity with Mr. Fox and still really found this book funny. I did read the first page to my nephew, but he shut me up at the mention of chickens being killed, so I think maybe this book isn't for a 3-year-old. Especially since he wanted to kill Mr. Fox. He really wanted this fox dead, so I'm not saying that he's going to be a serial killer, but it's likely. Anyway, still really enjoyed this book. If you are looking for something for younger readers who are starting out to read on their own, this is probably going to be a good book for them. Next, I read This Must Be the Place by Maggie O'Farrell, and this tells the story of Daniel and his wife Claudette, and they come from this blended family, and it talks about their lives before they met each other, their relationships before they met each other, and also tells stories about their characters from the perspective of other people within this novel. I know that a lot of people really enjoyed this book last year, which is what influenced my decision to purchase the book. However, I wasn't the biggest fan of the book myself. I found that whilst I did enjoy the story for the most part, I can't help but feel like it did a lot of jumping about all over the place because there wasn't a lot of story to hold the narrative together. I really did enjoy O'Farrell's prose. I think that she is a good writer. However, finishing this book didn't spur me on to go and purchase any of her other books. It was similar in style to Commonwealth and A Spool of Blue Thread, both books that I read this year, both books that I didn't really enjoy, and it told a story in a similar fashion in that it's telling the story of a family and these people whilst including these perspectives of other people and talking about an overall arc of things. And maybe that's what literary fiction is all about. Maybe it's more of a focus on characters and how characters are made up, but it's really just proven not to be for me at this point. However, I think that there are certainly, obviously, there are people that enjoy this book. I just haven't been one of them. Next, I read the forward book of poetry for 2016. And this brings together a load of different poems and poems from different collections throughout the UK from October 2015 to spring 2016, I believe. And whilst I enjoyed the first half of these poems from about page 40 onwards, I didn't really care for any of the poems in here, and I found myself growing quite tired and quite bored with this book. Next, I read A Line Made by Walking by Sarah Baum, and again, this is another book that I didn't enjoy. It's 300 pages of nothing, and whilst I did find myself empathising with the main character and seeing a lot of similarities between the main character's life and my own, in fact we've had quite a few similar thoughts, especially when I felt low at certain periods of my life. However, I just didn't get on with the book because nothing happens. There isn't really a story behind, apart from this character recuperating at home and musing on the world and art and her life. And whilst I think that some people can enjoy this, I am not one of them. I like my books to actually have some semblance of plot. Whilst I do believe that character is important, I do think that there's got to be a reason for me to be reading these books, and these meditations on this character just didn't do anything for me. Next, I read A Song for Izzy Bradley by Caris Bray. Well, I purchased this book because a lot of people on YouTube were talking about this book. Again, this is another book that I didn't actually enjoy. July has been a very poor reading month for me in terms of books that I found myself actually not enjoying that much, and this was one of them. After their youngest daughter dies, it's talking about this family grieving and struggling to find who they are after grief, and I did appreciate that. I do like to read books about grief and see if it's done well. and I think that grief was done well here, and how people change after the effects of grief was talked about quite well within here. I felt like the book reached some sort of climactic point but never went further than that. I feel like it stuck at the precipice of the climax and never came down with any sort of resolution or denouement, and that spoiled the book for me. Also, I did find a difficulty with the book which was more to do with my own thing with religion at the moment, and not being a religious person myself, and this book being so heavily talking about religion just wasn't something that I wanted to read about, and I did consider putting the book down because of that, because the things that were being talked about were making me angry, and whilst I appreciated Bray talking about this, it's just not necessarily a book that I would have read had I not seen it recommended so wholeheartedly by people on YouTube. Bray is a very good writer. I just wish that there had been more of an ending to the book, because really it just stops and gives you no idea what is going to become of these characters at all. And finally, I found myself being disappointed by The Golden Fool by Robin Hobb, the second book in the Tawnyman trilogy. I do intend to record a full review about this book. However, I will just say that the blurb to this book does not match up with the content within the book, which shouldn't be a problem. However, what it tells you is going to happen on the blurb doesn't happen until page 300 and something of a 630 page book. And also, nothing happens. It's a bridge between two books, and I felt like the entire thing could have been condensed down into 200 pages in the first book or the third book, and we would have had a alright story, but nothing really actually happens in this book. And whilst I did like what went on between pages 200 and pages 490, after page 490 nothing really happened apart from a lot of repeating himself. And I think that a lot of people could enjoy this book because it is a bit different with what happens in fiction usually, in that it doesn't have a stereotypical narrative arc. It just meanders along at this steady pace and then ends, whilst revealing a few things about the world and a few arguments and trials for the characters. So far this is the most disappointing of Hobb's books, and whilst I do enjoy her as a writer, this really did just... it was a slog to get through, and there was just no reward at the end of finishing it. So, them's the books. If you have read any of them and would like to discuss them, please feel free to do so down in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.